Welcome to the Finance and Measure I Oversight Committee special meeting of November 4th, 2005. Shall we stand and salute the flag? And Mr. Betancourt, would you lead us, please?
Absolutely. Stand, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, to the republic, one nation, God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
Thank you, Joe. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Busby,
Here.
Vice Mayor Thomas.
Here. Item 4 of the agenda, public comment and consent. Individual wishing to address to the committee regarding consent items or other matters not on the agenda are asked to complete a speaker's card and submit it to the city clerk. All remarks shall be directed to the committee members and are limited to 3 minutes. By law, the committee cannot discuss or take action on items not on the posted agenda. Do we have any public comment tonight? Hearing no public comment, we'll move to item 4A, minutes approval. Recommended action, approve the minutes of July 15th.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 5, discussion and action. All matters on the discussion and action calendar will be discussed and acted on individually. Individuals wishing to speak on these items are asked to complete speaker card and submit it to the city clerk. Comments should be directed to the committee members and limited to 3 minutes. By law, the committee cannot discuss or take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. Item 5A, current and pending capital projects. Receive a report from staff. Joe Betancourt.
Good evening, Joe Betancourt, Community Development Services. At the request of the Finance Committee, we've compiled a list of current projects. And as noted in the staff report, this is not indicative of all the projects completed this year. And we did have some smaller projects, one being the fire station solar project that was completed earlier this year. But as you can see through our list, we've got a sewer lift station project and sewer main replacement project, and that is covered by sewer bond funds. I did have a mistake on that was caught by Councilmember Thomas, that the sewer main the sewer main replacement project actually covers 2,710 linear feet instead of the 1,437 linear feet. We were able to add a bid alternate to that total project because we did open cut trenching instead of cure in place pipe, which saved us about $200,000 on the bid and made that
Wow.
second project able to be done within the budget of the bond fund.
How much do we have left that needs to be done?
It'll be pretty close to fully expended. We anticipate, because we got that $200,000 credit, and we haven't used any almost barely any contingency on the sewer main replacement project. We may have extra funds, and what we look to do with that is there's some projects, quicker projects we can get done at the wastewater treatment plant, including the restoration of a filter housing, actually a pretty big building. And then we plan on ordering the kind of upgraded pumps. We ended up using these pumps at Cherry Street. They're Xylem pumps, but they're Consortium, I think is the brand name. And they give us a little more technology off of our SCADA system. So we plan on ordering those for backup pumps at the lift station. And as the current older pumps give out, we'll replace them with those newer modernized pumps. So we've got some ideas coming forward to make sure we maximize all of that bond funding. But it does come down to contingency. The sewer line replacement project is on its last phase, and that's in the alley to the west of North Valley and Indian Health. So, we're kind of at the end of it. We haven't used barely any. Things can happen, but that contingency, I think, on $1 million was right around $108,000 that'll add to that saving. So, but we do have a plan to expend all of that by the end of the year.
Do we have any update on the pond lining issue?
So the pond lining issue, we're under contract to do the core samples. They got the vegetation, I think, removed out of it. We were able to find one contractor who was willing to drive through the mud and did a really good job with a backhoe and excavator. I think it was an excavator, and pull all that vegetation out. So currently we are waiting for, I think, dry access for our engineer to get out there and take those core samples, but they have not pulled the samples
Okay.
yet.
And just to add, I just signed off on the draft RFP for a new sewage rate study that the city engineer drafted, and will be circulating pretty quickly here in the next 2 or 3 weeks to
Mhm.
do a new rate study. It's already time. And things like projects like this will probably have to be calculated into the rate because, like the lining of the ponds was an unanticipated cost that's not just regular operations. And then, of course, we'll probably want to look at other improvements that we still may need to the entire sewage system that aren't entirely covered by the bond that we're about to expend all of by the end of the year. So I just want to give you the heads up that that is coming for the new sewage rate study, and the RFP should be out on the street in the next month.
I'll add one other project that's upcoming. That's not currently open, but that would be the Lighting and Landscape Assessment District. Rehabilitation of the landscaping and then looking to hire a contractor for ongoing maintenance. So that would be redoing the landscaping at Birch Street Village and also out by Harvest Drive. And that'll be, bids are due on that this Thursday.
So as I think the council knows, the landscaping and lighting, it's an assessment district where the property owners agree to assess themselves for additional landscaping services. We have been collecting money there, and Andy has said for the last couple of years, you guys need to do something with it because people, if they're getting assessed, they're expecting a service in exchange for that. So come up with a project and start expending those monies. You can't just sit on it. So that's what we're doing. We came up with a project. We heard Andy, and Joe and John worked together to come up with projects at those two sites.
Well, Birch Street's been developed for, time has a tendency to go by, what, 15, 18 years?
I,
A long time.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would say
So
that-
it would be time to refresh
absolutely.
and repair a
One of-
lot of what's out there.
One of the big things we noticed on that is they put in bubblers under the ground to water the trees. And unfortunately, those tree roots take care of those pretty quickly. So we've lost a lot of the water system over there. And we'll also be moving to some larger 4 to 6 inch, I think is what we spec cobble to replace the bark over there, making it easier to blow off the leaves and it won't wash away if we have flood issues in that area, which happens. So trying to go to things that'll hold up a little better and make it easier on the crews and stay around a little longer than that bark does.
On the Sycamore Park project, we are putting the pool as the primary
Yes.
first order of business.
Yep, absolutely. So what we want to do specifically there is assign a amount of working days specific to that portion of the project. So the overall project itself normally would be what you would assign working days to. We want to do this specific to the pool. And that isn't just a time frame for the contractor to try to hit. There's going to be actually delay penalties associated with that. Like every working day that is not completed within, I think is usually around a $1,300 credit back to us off of the contract. So we'll be assigning some teeth to that time frame to push that pool piece as much as we can.
And hopefully it'll be ready before we get too hot.
Yes, we're looking to do that. The estimated working days is 120 working days, which comes out to approximately 6 months. And now that's for the entire project from start to finish. So we're still within our window. If we can get our engineering finished out, we'll be able to achieve that.
Cool. And I noticed one other typographical that Marty corrected. The wayfinding signs said the estimated completion was December of 2026. It's actually 2025.
Correct.
That's something that would help our business district.
Absolutely.
So we want to get that up.
So what we're doing now is we're going to be working with a local sign maker to finalize the design, and we're going to take his input and then have them look at it. So there was some, basically we want to get it laid out on the full size, what we're going to be. We've got all the dimensions and everything over to our sign person, and then he'll be able to play with the design, tell us what works, what doesn't work. With that tree, it's going to be,
Well, the tree that was given to you from the planning commission, remarkably breaks.
Yeah.
So,
And there may be some, there's other options that we'll look at for that tree. What we want to get is his opinion on something that's a design like that and is smaller. What looks good? You know, we can't fit too much into a little space. So, but we'll look at other options for that.
right, we'd like to use it as the logo for the new website.
Yep.
Fine.
Know it
What's going
when
on?
it's done.
What's going on with that? So, yeah.
Yeah. So we're in final design phase. Well, working with getting to the final design phase. And with that will come a budget and an estimate of how many signs we can buy and if we can upgrade the poles to some classier looking kind of historic poles instead of the standard street sign poles.
Be nice to get those up.
Yes.
Yeah. On the library backroom carpet installation, I know that that whole backroom's been something that has been a process, but we're paying for it through library development impact fees. And I think we were talking at the last library board meeting, there's some AV updates to the Eubanks room and some other things that might be able to be pulled out of the library impact development fees. So I just, Christine had some really cool ideas about expanding programming and getting the space needed to expand programming. So I just want to make sure, if I think if memory serves, that account has more than what we expected in it. And we got money.
We do. It's just a matter of complying with the Nexus 2008 Nexus study. And John, the city engineer, is reviewing the list things that Christine wanted. And so he's going to let us know, does that qualify for expanding service?
Speaking of which, I think we discussed a new Nexus study is soonish.
I was going to recommend that it be in next year's budget.
That's
Is it-
just what I'm asking for. Is it this fiscal year, or next fiscal year?
Next fiscal year, yeah.
And just to add to the carpet and that back project, we're pretty much finished out as of today with the library ceiling piece of it, the replacement. Their last piece actually related to the carpet and was putting some quickcrete down around the new pole installation to level it out. And we've got the carpet arriving tomorrow, and we just issued our agreement to the contractor to sign off on. So we should be moving on that sooner than later.
Right on.
Outstanding. Anything else?
Mm-mm.
I think we just need to accept that, right?
Yeah,
That's
no
fine,
action
yeah.
needed.
You don't need to do a vote or anything like that.
Item 5B, apparatus replacement fund. Receive and discuss apparatus status of the apparatus replacement fund reserves based on recent projected strike team activity.
So I asked the fire chief to be here for this item just because he is more familiar with kind of the strike team revenue generation. And as it states, I think in the staff report that, it's like 6 months out by the time we get reimbursements. And so tracking it accurately is a little bit challenging. But the fire chief keeps a spreadsheet of what he thinks we're going to get based on strike team activity. So currently, as you've seen, we've got a running balance of just under $90,000 in attachment 1. And we believe we need to transfer over the $5,000. I think you mentioned this, Vice Mayor Thomas, about from the other capital fund that needs to be transferred into this fund.
That we approved last meeting, yes.
Right. So that's just a journal entry that hasn't happened yet. So that'll make this almost 95,000 when we transfer that over. And then I don't know if you have any questions or Nate wants to speak any further to like future anticipated funds we might get.
Yeah, good evening, council. One thing that was mentioned when we established the capital replacement fund for apparatus was that we would only put money for equipment into this account and that the admin fee salaries would go back to replenish the general.
Correct.
One thing that is a little bit weird, this number that's here is the 89,795. When I was looking at my spreadsheet the other day, my number came out to like 97,000. And when I looked at it, I believe it's because it's the, like when I go out on strike team as a strike team leader, it is it's the rental for the pickup, and it doesn't say it's paid in a different line. It says support vehicle, not equipment. And so before I wanted to make sure like that the intent for of the council was correct, that do you guys looking for equipment only, or that staff vehicle, which is also equipment? Would you want that piece moved over to it as
Oh, it has to be replaced when it wears out.
well? Okay. Because I think that
I think that should be added.
yeah, because this number is 89,000, and I think it should actually be like 97,000, 98,000. And then the staff report, at the time I was having a bit of computer issues. My SharePoint decided to self-delete my Excel spreadsheet. So I kind of gave Marty some rough ballpark numbers. I was able to rebuild my spreadsheet based off of the invoices that I've received for this fiscal year from our strike team activity. And rough math, I think that we're probably year to date around 76,000 instead of 100. We still have the whole winter. So if it's a really, really wet winter and there's opportunity for pre-position assignments for mud and debris flows, that number will continue to rise. But fire season's pretty much over for now. We've seen big fires in December and in January and November before, but they're usually the exception, not the rule. So with that, I will answer any questions you have.
Do you think it's about $97,000 plus we expect another 76? And the 5,000 we're moving over,
178.
178,000? Good start.
It is.
Doesn't buy us a fire truck. Doesn't buy us a street sweeper. It's a good start.
What kind of account is that money sitting in?
That we're talking about the apparatus replacement fund?
Mhm.
You mean what kind of an account? It's in a fund.
In an appreciating fund?
So typically, no, it's in the general fund.
Hmm.
So the way it like typically works is, you're making a spreadsheet, an account, right, in your software, but money sits with the rest of the general fund money.
Sure. I understand. I think depending on how long we can go without apparatus replacement, if it's not sitting like the general fund has to be really liquid and everything like that. But if we're going to sit on it for 3 or 4 years, we might as well be incurring some interest a little bit here or there.
Right. Well, so we, as you maybe, when we get into some of the other agenda items, we have about 2.2 million in checking right now. I was just talking to the vice mayor about possibly moving some of that into like a money market account. We have one CD remaining. As other CDs matured, it's all fluid. That's why I'm telling you about it, because it's all general fund money. And so some of it you put aside into a LAIF account. The LAIF account has, I think 1.3 million. I would have to look at the documents. I don't know. So that has a higher interest of like right now, I think it's running at a little over 4%. That's with the state. The LAIF is the local agency formation. I don't remember what LAIF stands for. It's an acronym, but that's the state. Basically, we put it in the state savings account, and that's not for everyday use. That sits there because it takes 72 hours to get it out if you need it. And so that's a longer term investment. And then we have $250,000 in one CD. So I think what we have been talking about is trying to figure out what's kind of the minimum threshold we need in the checking account where we're not earning any interest, and where we could move some of that 2.2 over to a place that is earning some more money. And I started talking with the bank today about that in light of some of the questions that the vice mayor brought forward after the packet was published.
Big fan of ICS sweep accounts. They operate like checking. They earn like bad CDs.
Yeah, right. So she was explaining that to me today. She said, we don't have exactly that type of account, but we have something similar, and let us do the number crunching and figure out what would be the minimum you'd have to keep in your account to, and move some over to earn some interest.
Right on.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks,
You're
Chief.
free to stay though.
Okay, item 5C, Measure I update. Now, I should pause for a moment and mention that Joanne, our finance director, had a family issue came up, and so otherwise she would have been here. So I suspect Marty will do a champion job trying to answer and describe everything. If it's not clear, we'll get better answers from Joanne when she's returned.
Yes,
I will
thank you. I'll
defer
try
to
my
you.
best. So with the Measure I update, I separated this out from the larger item D discussion. That's a lot more complicated, but just kind of the quick update is that currently the city's received 702,000 and change on Measure I funds over the last basically 2 quarters. We used the HDL estimate for this year's budget of a little over 2.1 million, which is what's in the budget. And as I was reminded by Joanne, the finance director, not every quarter of sales tax performs the same. So just taking 2.1 and dividing by 4 and thinking I should get this much every quarter isn't how it works, because there's different cycles with agriculture. And so there's like highs and lows. And when we receive our sales tax in different quarters, we don't receive exactly 25% of 2.1 million every quarter, right? It ebbs and flows a little bit. So, but right now we feel like we're performing pretty well and think that we will be doing close to target by the end of the fiscal year. Hopefully we're right on target. So that's kind of just the quick update on how Measure I is doing today and what we've received so far for revenue.
So for those who might be listening, like item 2 on the agenda item packet, the actual allocations, second quarter is 386,968 we've received. And we actually anticipate reconciliation of 387,900, or did we get that already?
On it, are you looking at attachment?
Attachment 1, second paragraph, fiscal year 24-25 actual allocations.
Okay.
So that would have been for the 24-25 year, the 774,868.
Right.
And then we anticipate for the 2025 year, 2.155.
So it's anticipated that we're going to receive it. I believe we haven't yet.
Right. We haven't got anything because the first quarter actually is, for others, it's third quarter. So it's July through September, through August. June, July, and August.
Well, right.
Or July, August, September.
We started receiving sales tax April 1, which is the 4th quarter of the fiscal year. So we received 4th quarter and we've received 1st quarter sales tax
Okay.
so far. So whether we have all of it, I'm not quite sure, because I think that there are some people here in the community. It takes time to get used to the additional charge. We did get some residual checks and some catch-up checks since April 1. So I know that I think people are still maybe adjusting a little bit to the new sales tax. So I'm not quite sure that we have exactly what we might get more, is what I'm basically saying,
Okay.
from past quarters. But this is, I think, through September 30th. I don't have any information about how we performed in October. Information before use through September 30th.
Okay.
I thank you for the mentions on, hey, not all quarters perform similarly. Feels like we're hanging our hat pretty hard on fiscal quarter 3 or real quarter 4. Will we, if for whatever reason the end of the year, the winter quarter does not perform the way we're expecting, will you come back and ask for a budget adjustment? Or do we just take it all the way to the end of the fiscal year to say, hey, look, it still might come out of the hole? Effectively, like, if we don't hit the number, how does that affect the general fund? How do we have to start thinking about adjusting any kind of operations logistics or anything?
So we do a mid-year budget. There's been a year when we didn't do it because we just were slammed and didn't have enough people, but we will do a mid-year budget adjustment, and that is to adjust out both revenue expenditures through the remainder of the fiscal year and to just also see how did we do so far. And in light of Joanne's departure, that will be done by Ann, I'm sure, because anybody that starts in the position, it's going to be a minute, and they're not going to be that would usually be like February or March. If Andy does it, it'll be like March that we'll get the mid-year. So I don't think a new person is going to be ready to like hit the ground running and do the mid-year budget. I think I'm going to have to ask him to do it. And that's the time when we make all those kinds of adjustments like you're talking about, and the council has to approve.
The reason I ask, we're projecting a soft winter, a pretty soft winter. And so, all right, hey, do we need to come back? And I know we're operating completely off of forecasts and everything like that. But as the data starts coming in, when is it time to say, hey, we might need to do that thing? But
yeah, it's typical for cities to do a mid-year budget adjustment every year. And it's mid-year looking at through December 31st. And so when the 31st is over, you're scrambling to crunch all the numbers and figure out how does everything look. And, when you have a full-time person in your department, you could usually do that at the first meeting in February because they would have spent January crunching the numbers. When you're using a consultant, a lot of times it takes a little longer to get to that mid-year budget. So that's why I think it'll be more like March for us this year.
okay. All I had that one.
Okay. I'm just going to take this moment to say, Doug, if you have any questions, feel free to insert whenever you feel appropriate. You're our sole in-house observer, so. When it comes to government finance, it's a tough nut to try to figure out. Understood. Understood. Okay, so item 5D, Measure I, impact on general fund.
Okay, so this is some creative math that I pretty much did all myself. So if you recall at the last meeting, the committee wanted some sense of like, how are we spending the money, the new Measure I sales tax, and how, where is it in the budget? What are we using it for? And if you recall, I told you and Joanne agreed that because there was a $1.4 million structural deficit that we would have been facing, it's basically just filling in and paying the salaries and benefits of all your current employees for them, just about. So what I did was I looked at, well, in most organizations, the largest portion of your budget is your salary and benefits of your employees. So that's where I had to back into how we're impacted by the new Measure I sales tax. And the way that I did it was based on prior conversations that were had internally in-house of what if it doesn't pass? What if the sales tax doesn't pass? What are we going to do? Where will the cuts be? So it was, even though most of the work was done last week, it was all based on prior conversations and looking at the organization, because I had to think about all of this a year and a half ago. And there are other places you can't cut your debt. You can't, there's other places where I can't just tell PG&E we're not going to pay you this month, right? So the easiest place is to make cuts to get to $1.3 million to fill a structural deficit, and then have more so that you can hire the contractors that you'll need to do part-time public works 2 days a week or some of the other part-time planning. So I went through our budget. I looked at the current positions that we have. I thought about the conversations we have and how I would recommend it to you if we were in that situation. If the sales tax hadn't passed, what I'd be recommending to the council. And that's the way I approached it. So unfortunately, it shows you what we wouldn't have if the tax hadn't passed. Because I don't know how to tell you without backing into it that what you have now is 20 budgeted employees and what you would have had was 5. And that was basically the outcome of this. And you would have had the city would have had a slashed city engineering budget, planning budget, like their budgets would have been cut in half to very bare minimum services. And then there's, the cuts, I think at the end of the day, I came up with a cuts of close to 2 million, because after you fill the structural deficit, you need some money for those contractors to still mow the lawn occasionally at the park or trim trees. It is, I think, well, it doesn't approach it quite the way that you wanted to, Councilmember Busby. I do think it illustrates the point of how serious the situation was last year, because there aren't really many other places we could have made any cuts. Like I said, I can't cut PG&E bills. Maybe there would be some residual impact by fewer things functioning, but I can't really calculate, well, what would the PG&E bill be if, we didn't, whereas I can tell you, I know it'll be if we have fewer employees, because that's in our budget and I can do that, right? Or I can recommend that. I can't just know what does less of a PG&E bill look like if we only are open 3 days a week here or something like that. That's harder to calculate. So I tried to make my job easier. I know it's a pretty grim picture. And that's the way I backed into, okay, this is where we spent the money this year. We spent it on 15 employees basically, and more robust planning, building, and city engineering services than we would have had. And like I said, I appreciate that it's probably not a very satisfactory picture. It certainly was not pleasurable for me to do this exercise. It was somewhat painful, and I just kept thinking, thank goodness, measure I passed. That's all I could think.
Do you feel like if we had to reduce the staff, the services that the community would feel would reduce as well?
Significantly, very, very much so. Yeah. I mean, would be, I don't know if it would really qualify as a city anymore, honestly. So yeah, it'd be, I don't even know that City Hall could be open the 4 days a week that we're open now, honestly.
I think the genesis of this originally was,
And we wouldn't have a full-time public works. The contractor that we would end up with by eliminating the public works department would be somebody that the city could only afford probably 2, maybe 3 days a week to do work. That's the other thing. These contractors couldn't work the way they work for us now, which is like based on projects coming in. They just, we pay them, they work, they make things happen. We'd have to meter it out and say, well, I only have code enforcement. You can only do 3 hours this week. You can't just do whatever I need you to do, which is kind of how we operate. And we have a budget, but you know what I mean? It's a robust enough budget that we don't worry that if there's more code enforcement, I can't call code enforcement. But in this situation, I would have to like really hyper monitor for all our contractors.
I think that there's a disconnect, despite I know the tremendous amount of work that the staff and current council at the time put into it in putting the information out of what the structural deficit looked like, how we were going to make it up, what the options were, and everything. I think nowadays, in today's day and age, we use hyperbole a lot. And I think that a lot of the community took that as hyperbole, but it was very real as to how expensive it is to just maintain the status quo year over year in California. And so I think as we start to take in this Measure I money, and we start to, it goes into the great and powerful behind the curtain of city government finance, understanding and being transparent about what level of those funds goes to maintaining the status quo, and how much of it is available to investigating a police department, additional recreational programs, things like that, things that we all want, but how do we pay for them and everything, I think is really, really important. And, it's the burden of government as people have gotten more cynical, rightfully, with government. It's the burden of government to kind of do the hard work to say, hey, no, this is real. We're not trying to sell you anything.
Right. Yeah. I think the other thing is that, doing some of the forensic, which Vice Mayor Thomas has done in this packet over the last few days, the kind of forensic investigating that's required. I keep saying it, I'm going to keep saying it. We really are at bare minimum staffing here. This is not minimum, it's bare minimum, because anytime there's a new assignment or extra work, it's just the same group of people, as the plate gets higher and piled higher, and to do investigative work to try to figure things out. It's like, if you're just keeping the trains running, I got to make a choice, right? It's either the trains keep running or I stop the trains so that I can drill down and investigate some things further. And it's valid and I want to do it. And I think it's important work. But sometimes the time just slips away from us and we don't have the capacity to do some of that homework that both of you have been doing with this packet. And so I wish that, I've had this conversation before with other people too, of like, well, do you just hire more people? And, and I think the staff will tell you, I'm very cautious about making those recommendations to you, because I also know you want to do projects, you want to have cash flow for other things. And if I absorb it in a permanent full-time person or multiple people that'll be helpful, it means there might not be money for grants and projects and other things that the council might like to do. So I'm cautious about running out and saying, let's hire more people, even though frankly, I think everybody here would like some more staff to do some more things here and some more support and help. And, we could certainly use it. I just balance that against, I always worry about having cash flow for new projects and for emergencies. And so I'm always balancing those two things.
Yeah, like an EMS service for the South County.
There you go. I mean, or the fact that our health insurance for 20 people went up to 266,000. That happens every single year. Our unfunded pension liability is going to go up again this year. That's, I don't even want to look yet, but I'm going to have to look pretty soon to see what the damage is. So everything like that just keeps going up. And I always worry, like, well, where's the money going to come from if we're not holding on to a reserve for something, right?
Yeah, and I think just to kind of make the point is those are things that are very real and very unavoidable, that account for significant sums of money. But because they don't get their own press release, because they don't have somebody that goes out on the city steps and says, this is a travesty, our health insurance costs, they just get absorbed quietly and people go about their jobs.
It's true.
And the aggregate of that is, why the hell are we broke? Well,
Right.
It's because of X, Y, and Z, and it's not some scandalous, sexy thing. It's a slow 5% every year that eats you alive.
That's for sure. And, maybe I should start writing. I was writing more editorials when we were trying to get the sales tax passed. Maybe I should go back to doing some more of those on different themes and topics that might be helpful.
Good for me.
Well, when it comes to where's the money for Measure I going, we just talked about it. $178,000 in a capital reserve account for apparatus. All of the revenue that's in that account would have gone into the general fund and used for ongoing daily expenses. So there's $178,000 for improving our equipment that we wouldn't have had without the sales tax. So there's 178 grand we have right now from Measure I, because otherwise we wouldn't have had it. Rest of it, yeah, it gets kind of absorbed because we were going in the hole. But that's one area where you can actually point and say, there it is.
It's the positive story that I was struggling to tell, and that's why I backed
There it is.
this way. Yeah.
That's one of them. I'm sure there's others, but that's one of them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Item 5E, long-term debt. Receive and discuss the staff with our city's long-term debt.
Mm. So the long-term debt, I think attachment 1 illustrates it the best. We've got the U.S. Bank Treasury money market account, $650,000 and change at 3.7% interest rate. The LAIF account, the California State Local
Wait a
Agency.
minute. We're on debt, not income.
Oh, sorry. What did I do?
You You jump ship.
I don't-
So I'm pleased to see the Umpqua Bank Gap loan, which was originally for $1.4 million, will be paid off
This fiscal year.
this fiscal year,
Yes.
the next couple months.
Yes, in fact, literally today, I got an email from the bank with special closeout papers that we have to sign and fill out to close out this loan right after, or as we're paying the last
So
installment.
that would be another $87,000 that we would have available to us.
Yeah, yes, that's correct. And then there's the CalPERS pension obligation bond with the outstanding balance of almost 6.4 million, and the sewage certificate of participation bond with $8.9 million. And that includes prior sewage work, but it also includes the current bond that we're using right now for the lift stations and all the other sewage projects we talked about earlier. It's a combination of new money and just refinanced old bond money that was long before I got here. The CalPERS pension obligation bond, I just want to point out, because I had to ask this, and in the attachments, you'll see there are two CalPERS pension obligation bonds on page it says 28 at the bottom, and then it is another one on page 30. And one is the obligation bond that was refinanced to pay off our CalPERS unfunded pension liability out of the general fund, and the other one was paid out of the sewage fund. So they bonded separately, but all of it is unfunded pension liability, because as you know, especially you, Vice Mayor Thomas, we do a cost allocation for staff time for those of us who touch the sewage fund. Our employee benefits and salaries are allocated once a year. We move over before the audit a percentage of our salaries. So they did the exact same thing with the unfunded pension liability. They took a percentage of the unfunded pension liability and refinanced it in the sewage fund. And then they did the rest of it. The majority of it really is in the general fund, which is a bigger number. So, and just as a reminder, you take your unfunded pension liability in year X, and you go off and you go out to the market and you bond to get a lower interest rate than the 7 or 8% CalPERS is charging you. And I'm not sure what these guys got in Marysville. We got 3.25% when we did this. But a couple years later, that unfunded pension liability starts to grow over at CalPERS. You've got this bond over here that you bonded, but you start growing a new unfunded pension liability, which is what's happening to us now. And that's based on how CalPERS does on its investments and its returns. So we now have, when I first got here, the city had just bonded the pension obligation bond. It had the bond, but it had no unfunded pension liability with CalPERS. Now we have approximately $100,000 in addition to the bond. And that number is going to continue to grow. And the worse that CalPERS does at their investments, the bigger that number gets. And just for the record, I want to say this is a pet peeve that Andy and I and Joanne have about CalPERS and the way that they do investments, because when they do poorly, because they want to do things like, climate change investment, which personally I'm in favor of, but I think I should just do it with my own money. I don't think I should be doing it with pension money and people's retirement. But when they go off and do that and they perform poorly, it's all of us that pay. Employees pay, the city pays. If you run off and have a policy, we're not going to invest in tobacco because we don't like, ethically, morally tobacco, but tobacco is doing great and it's still legal. It's like, this is a retirement, and whatever you don't perform or CalPERS performs poorly on their investment, we all pay. The cities pay for that. And that's part of the reason we have a growing unfunded pension liability again.
The whole pension obligation and CalPERS, who are supposed to be investing this money,
Correct.
it is not just you and Andy and anybody else that's frustrated with it. To me, it's an abominable issue that is allowed to continue where they are not good stewards of the money, and they have a fiduciary obligation and they should be thrown out.
Well, the CalPERS board operates politically and they make judgments and choices on politics. They're not just purely fiduciary decisions that they're making, and then that gets us in trouble. Because if you're doing it based on politics and your politics says, last year at the Municipal Finance Institute in December, there's always a CalPERS session, and they said, last year we, invested X amount of dollars in like green energy and climate change, and next year we're going to invest $5 billion. And like Andy and I looked at each other and I was like, are they kidding me? Like it's not performing well. Why are we continuing to do things that don't perform? Regardless of your personal politics, let's not do things that cost cities and individuals more money. But yeah, CalPERS has got a really serious problem because it's a very political board. It's not just about, hey, let's just do the best thing financially for the retirement fund, which is how it should be, in my opinion.
Thought I saw something that the CalPERS fund is underperforming 50% to your typical target date Schwab or something like that, just like 401k. It's a joke.
It's really a joke. I know. It's really upsetting, actually. Because I mean, the cities like Willows will pay for that. So
To the tune of $9 million on this pension obligation bond. And now we have another $100,000 this year that we have to either eat in our existing budget or let it build. Is that correct? We could pay it.
you have to make some sort of payment on it. We do have to make some sort of payment on it. I mean, the one thing that's yeah, I mean, we will have to pay something on it. It has to be accounted for in some way. We may not have to pay the full 100K this
So
year,
if,
but
if you don't pay it, it accrues.
Right. And,
Correct,
and
yeah.
there's
But
compounding.
the only
interest
real
on
way
top
to
of it.
avoid the accrual is to pay it and find it somewhere in your budget.
right. Yes. And if we wanted to, I mean, this is something about like once a year I talk to Andy about, because every year CalPERS will say, do you want to, learn all about a Trust 115? And a Trust 115 is pre-funding your unfunded pension liability. And Andy's like,
So they've designed the system to fail.
they have maybe, yeah, but their idea is like,
Because if they're asking you to prepay your unfunded liabilities, they
Yeah.
know they're failing.
They
yes,
performing so
it's a good way
poorly.
to
There's
put
a
it.
program for you to hedge for them performing so poorly.
That's exactly
criminal.
how it feels for sure.
It's absolute criminal.
Yeah, it is criminal. That's true. And Andy always says, you're not, Santa Monica. You can't afford to pre-fund that. So no, don't bother with it.
So for 2026, we will owe 504,000 and 46,000. So $550,000 payment on the existing pension obligation bond. And we're still short 100,000 because they're adding another 100,000 to us.
Yes. Well, and that last year, the unfunded pension liability that was growing again was about 88,000 or 85,000. I haven't looked for this year. I'm scared too, like, cause I feel like it's still growing and it's going to get worse. So.
Okay. Take a deep breath and calm down because that just upsets me
Yeah.
greatly. 5F, investment summary.
Okay, sorry, that's when I was jumping ahead before. So the table attachment 1, I think shows it the best. US Bank, we have 650,000 at 3.7% interest. LAIF, which I mentioned before, which is the California State Local Agency Investment Fund, is the acronym. That's a savings account. Sorry, it's 334, almost 335,000 at 4.34%. That's the current interest in LAIF. LAIF's interest does fluctuate. So that's actually pretty good. I've seen it before when it's down at 1 point something. Stifle, we have one CD, 250,000 at interest rate 4%. And then the money market account has got 15,000. The checking has got the 2.5 million. And then we have a little bit in our Stifle, a cash account for just over $5,000. And as you can see, the money market, not much interest. And the checking, as we discussed earlier.
So we're looking into way we could maximize return on that.
Correct.
On that. Problem is it's floating balance.
Right.
And as I noticed when I looked at the bank information, November, December, January seemed to be our tough months where we have a lot of outgoing. And what I learned about the budget for those who are listening in cyberspace, we spend about 60% of our expenses in the first half of the year, but we only receive about 45% of our revenue. So it's a cash flow issue. So we have to be cautious in keeping it liquid, but at the same time, we got to find a way to maximize some return on that. So
Yes, the
we
lean,
talked about that, and we'll work with the bank and see what we can come up with.
the very lean part of the year, we are headed into it right now because we get our big chunk of property tax money in late January, usually, which is like the bulk of our property taxes from the county. And then we get a small residual adjustment a little bit later, which is a much smaller number. So, that's a pretty big number. I don't have the budget in front of me, but it's the property taxes are the, I don't know, around 1.5 to $2 million in that range. So if you're running out and your budget's only a $6 million budget, that's a pretty significant amount of money to be like out of by, we're kind of out of it by like December. We're out of money. We're on fumes. So, and that's, just so you know, that is standard for most cities. They're all kind of like waiting for their big property tax check in January.
Understood. Thank you. And then the financial reports, that would have been Joanne, trial balance cash analysis reports.
Yeah, if you have too many questions about that, I'm probably not going to be super helpful.
I'll
Just to
probably
be
just summarize that. I went through and I looked at the trial balance. That's how I managed my business. You live and die by your trial balance. And I picked out 3 particular accounts, and I was able to be provided the detail. And I think you also received that detail just to make sure that where it's going and we're watching the nickels and the dimes where those are. And, so I went through that pretty extensively. So other than that, I don't know if there's a whole lot to say about that information. If anybody in cyberspace wants to ask any questions, they can call me. Be happy to try to answer that for them.
And just for the record, I want to say that, the community, not just the council, but the public is free to ask us, questions anytime. I mean, it's easier if we get it via email. I don't, dropping everything to have a meeting when I don't know what the questions are going to be and have to research it. Not as productive as getting an email from the public. But I mean, certainly people should feel like they can ask their city financial questions or questions about the budget or, where we are, investing our finances. So I also want to say that because I think sometimes people think that we're in some sort of ivory tower and not available and only available to the council. And that's just not the case. I may not be able to get back to you in, 5 minutes if it's a bunch of finance questions, but certainly we're also here to serve the community as well if they have questions.
I do want to say one thing, just going back to, I'm sorry, to the debt. I think part of this as the finance committee is to provide a little bit of perspective of scale, right? Nowadays, it's again, we live in a world of just overloaded hyperbole, and we hear a lot of big numbers. So I think nowadays we can get really numb to hearing $100,000 swing or $100,000 unplanned oops. Post Measure I, that accounts for about 1.5% of our total budget. 1.5%. That one thing that we didn't like, hey, this is happening. And I think doing some rough math, if we had not passed Measure I, I'd be closer to 4.5%. 4.5% of our total budget. Like, imagine that. If your house 5%, like, and we're getting hit with 3, 4, 5 of those a year. I think to provide a little bit of a yardstick as to scale, $100,000 accounts for 1.5% of our budget. That's a big deal to us. And so keep that in mind when you start hearing a lot of these big numbers thrown around. How big we are and what end of the pool we're playing in.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Nope.
I'll get out the soapbox.
I'm on one, man.
I had to climb off when it came to CalPERS. Anything else to add, Marty,
I do not have anything else to add. No.
Nate, Arlene, Ross?
Speak into,
Need to
please.
speak into it.
Come on up, Doug.
Doug Ross from the Valley Mirror. I just had a question, if you would mind redefining structural deficit. I could look it up, and if it's a real long thing, don't bother answer the question. I can look it up on Google. I just wanted to put in a comment that our Mirror is working at a very skeletal staff level on pure production of county and city and district and general interest stories and whatnot. The greater Sacramento Valley travails and everything else, to anything that City Manager Brown could contribute in way of articles that clarify or go into the weeds and details. I'd love to do it, but I've got so many beats covered on my shoulders. I'm like a gallon Asia, pardon me, with about 5 water pails on a stick on one side of me and 5 on another. Appreciate everything you do for the quality of Willow's under what do you call it? Hidden infrastructure work that has been done on streets and everything else is really of a high quality, and it shows about a 20 to 10 year cognizance that people don't see it because you don't see hidden infrastructure. So thank you, thank Nate, thank Carlene, thank all the past city councils, and thank you. So that's about it, really.
Thank you, Doug. That's
Thanks,
very
Doug.
kind.
Structural deficit, as in debits and credits. The amount of money we were taking in was 1.6 or 1.3.
No, our general fund is close to 6 million.
Yeah, okay. Structural deficit is in that fiscal year we were taking in 1.6 million less than we were spending.
No. No, it's an ongoing, another way to say it is ongoing deficit. So, right. You can with the sales tax or some other.
Either more revenue or less cost.
Yeah, right. No, they're not, it isn't always, because right now we're in the black. And so that's good. No, there's not always going to be a structural deficit. Because if you have an ongoing deficit or structural deficit, you're going to eventually run out of money and you'll have to make cuts. And that's where we were headed.
So structural deficit is a financial world term. And I had it in my mind that structural deficit meant that there are certain base amounts for infrastructure and physical building. So we're not talking about the same thing. Structural deficit is a financial virtual reality.
It's like this, Doug. If my revenue is $100 a month, and in my savings I have $100 saved, right? One-time money saved, and every month I'm spending $110, and I don't make any cuts, and I don't bring in any more revenue, and I can keep using my savings, but eventually the savings is going to be gone because it's one-time money, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be gone in approximately 10 months. And that's the structural deficit, is that you're continuing to use the one-time savings you have to balance an ongoing budget. And eventually you will run out of money unless you make cuts or bring in more revenue.
The word structure refers to, you are running a deficit, but you continue to dip into savings
Correct.
to do it.
Right, that's crystal clear.
Yep.
Thank you. All of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
With that, I think we are done, and we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:30.
Perfect.